purpose of this screencastify is to take up our database reading assignment. I assume that you can read the top paragraph here, so I'll leave that alone. I would like to highlight, though, that you do use it. You do use databases. Almost every company tracks its user customer base, so when you're online shopping and you put in a username and a password, and then you're being tracked, and so is all the purchases you're being done or using. When you sign up for internet applications, you're also putting information into a database, and so your information is also going to be stored and used there. So then the purpose of a database: storage, organization, retrieval, and management of large quantities of data. That's pretty key. It wouldn't be much point setting up a database for 13 or 14 records, because that could be just done on paper or in a spreadsheet. But when you start talking about thousands and thousands of records, and then trying to determine patterns and correlations in how that data is in the actual data itself, then databases become pretty powerful, and so do the queries that work in them. How do databases and filing cabinets compare? Now, a filing cabinet has a whole bunch of information about certain clients, perhaps contained within a folder on separate sheets of paper. So if you go to the doctor's office, then there's a folder for you, and all the appointments that you make there, all the diagnoses that are taken, perhaps whatever else, that all gets collected into the folder, as well as any medication that's been prescribed, so that the next time the doctor meets with you, they can look at your folder and see the information about you and make better decisions. Now, in a database, it's the same sort of thing, except that all those records are put together in a table rather than a folder. And the other advantage with the database is that those pieces of information can actually be linked together. So perhaps you could have a table about a certain set of diagnoses or a certain disease linked together with other information. And then the doctor could or would perhaps link other information together from your tables and be able to more quickly perform a particular diagnosis. So maybe they have a table of symptoms linked to what you have, and they can cross-match or cross-reference the symptoms together, and then the query would be able to look into a set of known diseases that produce certain symptoms and then help the doctor in making a diagnosis. How are they different? The filing cabinet holds basically static information on paper, and the database would hold live information on electronic files. The paper database is restricted to one particular place in time. It's physical. If you change doctors, then you need to buy your file folder and move it to your next doctor's office, versus if it's electronic, then your information can be accessed anywhere. Your doctor in his or her office can access it, and then when you go see a specialist in McMaster or some other place, they can also access your file and they can share that way. So it's a little more convenient. Data in databases are organized in the following fashion. You have records and you have fields. A record is the information about a particular person or something. So for instance, if you as an individual are a record in a database, then the table would record information about you in terms of last name, first name, address information, phone number, contact information, and all that sort of thing. The first name, last name, contact information, all those pieces of information are the fields. So in the doctor's office, the doctor would have a table of clients. You would be one record in that table with all your contact information, and the doctor's other clients would be the other records in that information. Now, the doctor might also then have separate fields in there or separate tables in there that have more broken out information about their particular clients. So they can read through that. Why is consistency so important in a database? If the same information is entered in different ways, then the database will interpret things differently. So if you had something like, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here and give you a little example. If you put in LOROJO, or if you put in L0R0J0, even though those postal codes look the same, they are different because this is all letters, this postal code, and this postal code is proper with numbers and letters or apart from each other. So those are two different, even though apparently they look the same, and the database would interpret them as being different. So if you had Smith in this with this postal code, and you had Elias with this particular postal code, then those two people would be interpreted as coming from different places, even though they might be living really right next door to each other. The database wouldn't be able to pick up that kind of information. Why are queries more efficient than browsing? For one thing, browsing would cause you to have to look through all however many 10,000 records that you need to look at, and a query actually goes into the database and does the looking for you and then pulls out the records that meet certain criteria that you can look through. So then you're limited then on how much looking at results you need to do. And if you put in good queries, then you could look at very, very few results. So the difference of maybe 5 or 6 returns on a query search, as opposed to manually having to go through and look at literally thousands of pieces of information. Database reports can be used to actually sort query returns to make it to set them up formatted so that information is a little more readable, a little more useful, user-friendly. The users place database contents into other programs. We looked at mail merging, and you can also pull information from a database and into a spreadsheet to do extra calculations, perhaps. So in maybe using a database to put in invoices and then using a spreadsheet on the back end to do end calculations or year end or things like that. And I am going to pause here because I think I'm getting close to the end of my 10 minutes.